Hello and welcome back. And as you can see, I'm already surrounded by three lovely people. And this is because the next session will be about AI copyright. And it's called Generate AI, Generate versus Create. So copyright rules for music AI and the effect of the creative workflow. And I'm surrounded here by Celine Garcia, who is like a project manager, and she's also an independent label. She runs an independent label and publishing company called Puppet Master, and she's managing the French musician that you can also see here, whose name is Skugge. And he has produced the one of the most successful AI albums or songs in the past couple of years. And then, last but not least, we have Sari, who is a lawyer who is specialized in the entire topic about AI, copyright rules, and what it means for music. So, and these three awesome people will have a conversation now about what it means for the music business and the music ecosystem when AI is going to hit the mass market and when it's used in the creative workflow. So I'm now giving it up to Celine Garcia, who is going to moderate this panel and to lead you through the next 30 minutes about this super exciting topic. So the stage is yours, Celine.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Matthias, for inviting us to this very interesting hot topic. As Matthias said, I am currently running the projects of Skugge, and I will be today a kind of moderator, and also I will participate to the discussion with my from my publishing point of view, because I am publisher involved in the issues that AI raises regarding copyright. So maybe we could start with you, Benoit, because you will share with us a concrete example of the first part of our discussion about Generate, and you will show us, and we will hear with you Generate musical example.
Thank you, Celine, and thank you very much for the invitation. Do you see my screen?
Yes. Now it's okay.
Okay. So my name is Skugge. I just introduce myself briefly, and then I show you an example, a concrete example that will maybe be a good start for our discussion. I'm a musician in residence since 2015. I work with researchers on prototypes for creation, for music creation. And I find it really inspiring as a songwriter, because before that I was a typical songwriter. But since 2015, I'm working with researchers, and I help them to build tools for musicians. And why I build the tools with them, I create songs, I do experimentations, and I invite other artists to play with me with the song. So I did several albums, as you see here. There is a new album for next year in March, and I'm very happy to continue my work with this music and AI process. So the first example, because the topic of our discussion is generate versus create, and there are many aspects that are really interesting in both sides. Especially for the moment for generate the use case. And I will play to you an example that I generated with a tool that is, that the name of the tool is Jukebox. And it's a tool developed by OpenAI. I find it very, very interesting because it creates all songs. It creates the lyrics, the chords, and it's also an audio result. So you have all the sounds that are generated. So it's really a complete kind of generated result that you can have with this tool. How it works, it's really easy, but you have to you have to go into Google Colab, so it's not so easy. But when you have all the information, it's not very complicated, and you fill the system with constraint. For example, in this example, I used a French pop style constraint, and I also choose the artist Jennifer, and the system generated, I think, around 1 minute. So it's very long. It takes a long time, but it's like 9 hours to generate 1 minute of music. And I will play the result, and after that we can comment. Oh, sorry. So what you hear now is really interesting. There is a dog, but it's not in the song. What you hear is a song, but the quality is really poor. It's in mono, but you can feel a mood. You can hear a guitar. You can hear a voice. The lyrics are not very clear, but it's inspiring, I think. And I want, after that, we'll go into the create topic, but now we can stop just here, and I let Sari comment this slide that she has created for us.
Great, thank you so much. So what we've heard, or what the process that Benoit just described, is represented here. So this is a slide that I've borrowed from academic colleagues in Munich, and it represents actually the technical process of artificial intelligence. So what we can see is we have training algorithm that's just been composed without any training, so certain steps that need to be taken. We have a couple of sets of training data that will go into the algorithm to make sure that it does what it needs to do. This trained algorithm gets developed into a functioning software. And in that case, you can, as Benoit has done, you can select certain types of data that go in to the functioning software, and that will result in a certain output that we've just heard. So from a legal point of view, we like to make very simple representations and graphic representations, so we can visualize what happens and we can analyze the situation on what is happening here and what types of rights are actually activated, if you want. So from a copyright point of view, what is important here is that both for the training sets and the data sets that might go into the final software, those data sets might contain certain protected subject matter. So there might be compositions that are protected under copyright, there might be performances, there might be phonograms, so master copies that are used to train the data and afterwards as input data in order to generate the output data. So leaving the output aside for now, let's focus on the input side. The subject matter that is used in the data sets might be protected under copyright and related rights, so the performance rights and the phonogram producers' rights. Now then the question is, okay, when these data sets are being processed, what actually is happening? If there's any types of copies, so in a technical sense, there might be the reproduction right that applies. So if there's technical copies in this technical process, the authors, the performers, the phonogram producers might have the reproduction rights that applies. Now, of course, this means that in any type of development of artificial intelligence technology, it means that you'd have to ask for the permission of all the rights holders of the rights that are included in the data set. Now, often people don't actually know what's included in the data set, so that's very, very annoying. Very often, it's data sets that have no protection whatsoever. So for example, if it's just medical data, if it's raw data, there's no issue. But if we're talking about music that's being analyzed, obviously we'll have to take this into account. So if we have a very large notion of the reproduction right that is protected under copyright, meaning that every single technical copy is protected under the reproduction right, it would mean that all these right holders cumulatively have to give their consent in order to process the data set and in order to develop the AI technology. So that will be very difficult. And so at the European level, the legislator has made the balance. So they were wondering, okay, we like the authors, we think it's important to protect the authors and the right holders of related rights. But on the other hand, we also think it's important that AI technology be stimulated to develop in Europe as well. So they came up with this compromise, if you want, in the form of an exception. So you have this very large reproduction right that covers all the technical copies. But if those technical copies are generated in the context of what is called text and data mining, so technical processes to discover certain patterns in certain data sets, in that case, the European legislature says this is authorized. So we have a mandatory exception for text and data mining. And even then, we need to distinguish between two types of applications of these processes of text and data mining. If the text and data mining takes place in the context of research, so for example, if there's medical research and there's going through a lot of scientific articles to see what type of connections can be made between certain types of foods and certain type of cancer, for example, or certain locations and certain diseases, for example, if you can do this on scientific articles, it's in the context of research, no question about it, this is authorized. By contrast, if the text and data mining processes are applied in any other context, including for commercial purposes, by default, it's permitted. You don't need the consent of all the right holders, but the right holders have the possibility to opt out. So if the default position actually, it changes. So by default, normally in copyright, you need to acquire the consent of the right holders before going and making a reproduction. But in this case, you can actually go and make the reproductions in the context of text and data mining unless the right holders have opted out.
Thank you, Sari. I have one question to you. You are talking about the opt-out right, but as a publisher, for example, and also, for example, Benoit is author and composer, so we are right holders. How we can apply this opt-out right? How does it work?
Well, that's the €1 million question, I would say, because the directive, so now we have regulation at the European level, it's a European directive. But this European directive, it can't be applied directly. So it needs to be transformed into national law. And this is what all the member states, the 27 member states are doing right now. Unfortunately, the European legislator has not been very precise on the modalities. So it just says, the right holders, they have the possibility to reserve the right, to reserve the reproduction right for text and data mining. But how it should be done, preferably by automated means. So if there's some kind of standard that can be developed, great. If not, we don't really know. So maybe you can do this by contractual means. Maybe you can do this in the terms and conditions of the website where a certain piece is published, for example. But there's no consensus on this point so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And another question, maybe just before going to the second part, about the result that Benoit played for us. So it's a generated result, as Benoit explained. Benoit applied two constraints, but he didn't make some artistic choices at this step. So, Sari, can you tell us, for example, who is the right holder of this generated result?
But it's a very interesting question, because depending on the choices that Benoit has made, so now Benoit has showed two very simple criteria, not very specific criteria. So arguably, he has many choices, but the choices he's made were fairly generic. What we are looking for in copyright is an originality. So an author, in order to enjoy protection under copyright, they need to make choices, they need to have a creative margin, and within the creative margin, they need to make certain choices that reflect their personality. So there needs to be there needs to be a use of the creative space in a way that reflects the personality of the author. If this is not done or insufficiently at a level that is actually too abstract, there will be no copyright. But that doesn't mean that there's no rights at all. So there might not be a human author and there might not be a human performer, because we heard a voice, but this is not a human voice, is it, Benoit?
It's a kind of, because it's a voice that is generated from real voices. In other examples that you can find in the jukebox site, you can hear like Elvis Presley or Sinatra singing. So it's really disturbing, but they are not really singing. So it's really disturbing, and there is a big lack, as you say, in terms of rights. But what I find interesting is there we are at the point where there is a generated result, and then the artist or the curator finds the beauty or not. He is moved by this result or not. And I think that the author right and all these questions is can be summarized by: am I inspired, and will I do something on that? And that's the second topic. I think we can move to it.
Yeah, it's a very good transition. Yeah, it's a very good transition, Benoit.
I will share my screen again. Can you see this slide now?
Yeah.
Okay, create. So you heard this result. We can't hear really the lyrics. There are some words that appears, but it's not clear. So I was really inspired by this song, because I find it, I don't know, mysterious. And I wrote lyrics on it. Then I sang over the existing vocal to create a more realistic sounding lead vocal sound. Then I made a production with choirs around this voice. I played the guitar that is really similar to the guitar that I hear, that I can hear in the generated result. And I added string with the tools that I developed with the team CTRL at Spotify, which I work with. I added bass, drum. So you see that there is a lot of work that is done on this result. I will play the video. You will hear at first the result that was generated. You will hear it again. And then you will hear all the production that I made on it. So you see that I work on Ableton, and you will see all the tracks that I've made in this video. So this is the original. And then you hear the production. These are the vocals. So you hear that there is a lot of work that is done under this result. But at the end, and Sari, I ask you the questions because we don't know. I know that I've done the arrangement, and I'm the author of the lyrics, because I wrote a new kind of lyrics on it. But the composition is still generated by this open AI tool. So
exactly.
I wrote to OpenAI, say I have no answer for the moment. But maybe you have an idea of what I do for
What your
this.
rights are now.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
True, but it's a wonderful example, because indeed you've made some arrangements, and perhaps the adding of certain arrangement, the choices that you've made, in addition to the in addition to the score that's been generated by the AI, that by itself might be protected. So the arrangement itself might be protected under copyright. But on the other hand, for sure, one might say you're the performer, because you use, well, your guitar, you use your voice. But funnily, we've discovered in the research that I've been doing with some of my colleagues, we've discovered that in many countries, there's actually a fairly tight link between the copyright protection of the piece that is being performed and the protection for the performer, which is a very worrying situation, of course, because if the score is as such, or if the composition as such has not been generated or has not been created by a human, but has been generated by an AI and is not protected under copyright, that would mean that you, as a human performer, performing not protected creations, that would mean that you don't have any performance rights either. So this is a very big issue. Now, this, of course, it's a very particular interpretation, and I'd be surprised if really many legislatures would go so far as to deny protection for the performer just because the composition has not been created by a human. But there is one more right, perhaps, that we might address, and that's the phonogram, the right of the phonogram producer. So often the labels in a more classical context, the labels. For their part, actually, it's quite interesting that of all the roles in the music industry, the role of the phonogram producer is not under discussion, because for the author, we need to demonstrate, has there been an original creation? For the performer, they need to be in the artistic sphere. So under Belgian law, I'm a Belgian lawyer, under Belgian law, we don't need to demonstrate that there's a performance of a protected, copyright protected work, but they need to be within the artistic sphere. So there's a quality requirement somewhere. But for the producer, none of these requirements apply. So there it suffices that they generate a fixation of some sort. Now, of course, back in the days, so in the 1950s, 1960s, the idea was to protect the investment because, of course, as a phonogram producer, you had to make very big investments in studios, in technically skilled personnel, etc. But today, but you've done it. In the fixation as such was not a big requirement. So we see a very interesting shift from the protection of humans to the automatic, quasi-automatic protection of companies and producers.
Very interesting, okay. Yes. And but
yeah.
the last thing I want to say about that, if nobody had choose this result, this generated result, it wouldn't exist. I mean, so the fact that I choose this generated result makes me, I think, the owner of it, because I'm the one who has discovered it. It's like a gold seeker. I mean, and when we are artists working with AI, we are a kind of gold seeker because we're searching for the beauty in a vast things of middle class results. I mean, something like that. Yeah.
Mediocre results, yeah. No, I understand, but that might not be sufficient to actually get to copyright. By contrast, you might have contractual rights. Also, you might protect your creation just by adding contracts and to require certain behavior in a contractual form. There's perhaps one more point that I'd like to make with regard to the imitating of existing performers, because there, of course, well, text and data mining is there. Maybe, well, in the end, the result, the output will not be the actual voice of Elvis Presley, will not be the actual voice of Frank Sinatra, as you said, but as humans are concerned, they might have some claim on the basis of their personality rights. So if you're really getting too close to the actual voice of a singer, you might claim personality rights, and they might stop it. But just imitation as such is not something that can be protected under copyright.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you so much, Benoit and Sari. And I don't know if, Matt, you have some questions now?
Yeah, there's like tons of questions, obviously, because this is a really it's not a new topic, but because I think AI has been around for tens of years, but now it gets really more and more into the mainstream. But one thing, because Sari mentioned so many different entities, so many people who could actually have an interest in the copyright, performance rights, author rights, the phonogram people. So I wonder if there's like maybe on not a political level, but on an industry level, is there like a kind of consortiums and working groups that involve like people from, let's say, Google, that the developers of the OpenAI, and like the major labels and independent labels, as well as the as some artist organizations? Is there like are people getting prepared for this thing to become like a mainstream thing, or is there no organized network so far that discusses that on a political and law level?
Maybe I can answer for France. For example, we have a report made 2 years before for the French Ministry of Culture about AI and copyright issues. But from the point of view, from my point of view as an independent publisher working with other colleagues, and I really noticed a lack of interest or a lack of knowledge. I mean, knowledge more than just, the basics, received ideas about AI. I think we, as a publishers, label managers, and musicians, we really have to be more involved in the new issues that those tools are raising for now. And I think it's there is a lot of work to do.
Yeah, somebody needs to. Yeah, go for it, Benoit.
Yes, I just want to add that it can be a new market. Like the streaming was a new market. This can be a new market. Labels, big major company could create data sets that could be like work with a subscription, and be similar to the stream, a subscription like for Spotify or anything. So if all those entities could handle this problem, I think it could be a win-win process.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be like somebody needs to take on the lead and organize kind of consortiums to do that. And it's interesting that you say that it could be a new market and a new kind of business model. Like the session that we had before your session was with like the CJ Carl from Databots and Key and Christ, and they created this AI-driven rap song. And what they did is they trained like also a neural network, and then they released they used like funk and soul samples from the 70s and 80s. And but the AI kind of like, and then they run it through like, I don't know, some machine from like one of the leading US companies who detects like copyright infringements even better than Content ID from YouTube. And so they released like 8,000, I think, I'm not sure, 8,000 samples or 8,000 hours of like public domain AI generated samples now. So for them, it's like, okay, we just want to give it back to the people that they can play around with that. But obviously in the future, if you think about that, this could actually be a really valuable business model if you're an artist that actually like gives his voice, gives his like musical skills, and lets it run through an AI, and then like lets it use by other people. So I think it's like with most of the technologies that like with the big players, they get interested in it if there is a market already, but it's the small people that need to create the market. And once there is a market, then people are gonna infringe and complain about that. It would be cool if we don't do this mistake this time, like we did with like piracy back in the days and all that stuff. I think it would be so valuable if Europe, on a European level, somebody could actually take on the lead and say, okay, we're going to sit down with like the Googles and the Universals and the Warners and Sonys and Merlin and whoever is a part of that, and bring them all together, and we sit together for 3 or 4 days, get like experts like Sari on board to explain the different things, because that's probably one of the most difficult things, is to explain to a tech person how the music industry works. It was always the biggest issue. And to explain a music industry person how technology works. And having translators and people that understand both worlds, it's so rare, but it's so important that we actually bring them together to shape the future. I don't know, Sari, like, because you're probably surrounded by a lot of lawyer people, do you feel that there's a growing interest in that space for copyright and AI in the creative industries?
It's a bit of a niche because, well, AI has, at first, especially been developed in more industrial contexts. We do see now that there's more interest, more applications, and there's more lawyers, obviously, who are going to show an interest. What's interesting now is that it becomes more concrete, because as you said, AI has been around for a long time, but for a very long time, it remained very theoretical. Now, the stakes are real. And so perhaps I can just briefly mention that I'm finishing, with my colleagues, I'm finishing a study for the European Commission, where we've looked into the application of AI in various sectors, so the music sector, audiovisual, the gaming sector, and the visual arts sector. And so we've done interviews, we've looked at the applications that are existing, we've done some interviews with, in-depth interviews with legal experts, but also with industry experts, and we've gathered the state of the art, if you want, on AI and the applications in the cultural sector. We're finishing it now. We hope that it will be published in, let's say, December, if everything goes well. So hopefully that can feed the discussion as well.
Yeah, that would be like super cool if you could like keep us in the loop about that.
Yes,
the wider we spread it, the more people will get like pay attention to this topic. So yeah, basically the time is over, and like it was super insightful. I think that a lot of people who watched that learned a lot, and probably got inspired to make up their mind about the future for music and AI and how it can be dealt with in terms of copyright law. So thanks a ton for all your time and all your input that you gave us. And yeah, all the best. And please keep us in the loop about all your projects. It doesn't matter if it's lawyer-wise or creative-wise. Bring it on, and I'm happy to like spread the word about it, because I think it's really important that we all work on that together.
With pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Matt.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.